That is beautiful. Thank you all so much.
And a matching gavel go with it.
Yeah, I see that. That's just so you all can see. I have had the good fortune to represent the people of the city of Taft for 16 years now. And it has been one of the great thrills of my life, right next to my children and my grandchildren. And T minus 60 seconds.
Got several people came to me, so they can't hear, they see the video, but they can't hear the audio on the channel 11.
Is this now coming on?
Yeah, it just went live.
Pardon?
They just turned it on. They just turned it on.
So it worked for, because they had 2 meetings, last 2 meetings, they couldn't hear it.
Oh, on the TV?
Yeah.
I'll have to talk to Lee about it, he sends that for us.
Okay.
Or should they have internet access? If they could, they can go to YouTube, that'd be the easiest place.
I don't know, but it's on, especially on channel 11, they see the video, but not the sound.
I don't know. That Bright House takes care of that for us, right?
Well, he uses their equipment down at the Bright House office to upload the video.
All right, we got about 30 seconds. Everybody ready?
That was a long couple minutes, huh? Long couple minutes.
Indeed.
Our voices are getting stifled.
The clock is a little bit fast, unless all my clocks are a little bit slow.
Yeah.
Okay, we ready to get this party started? All right, here we go. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Taft City Council Successor Agency Joint Regular Meeting for Tuesday, July 21st, 2020. Pursuant to the Governor's Executive Order N20-20, Taft City Council meetings will be held in the following manner. This is temporary, but the duration of that temporary effect goes on and on. In order to protect our constituents, city officials, and city staff, all public meetings until further notice will be held closed to the public. City Council meetings will be live streamed in real time to our YouTube channel by searching for City of Taft City Clerk on YouTube or at this link, www.youtube.com/user/City of Taft. Secondly, public comments for City Council meetings will be accepted in the following manner. Public comments will be accepted up until 5 p.m. the day of the meeting. Written comments may be dropped off in the drop box in front of City Hall. Comments may be emailed to the city clerk at ymayfield@cityoftaft.org, made by phone to the city clerk's office at area code 661-763-1222, or the comments received will be read into the record. Then finally, should a member of the public prefer to speak during a live portion of the meeting, they shall contact the city clerk prior to the time listed above and provide a contact phone number, be available during the meeting times of 6 p.m. to 7 p.m., and they will be contacted at that phone number provided and placed on speaker to address the council during the meeting time. We will try to do that this evening. We're going to begin this evening's meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Councilman Jeff Eveland, followed by an invocation by Councilman Ed Whiting. If you will join me, please.
Salute, pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please bow your heads. Heavenly Father, gracious Lord, we are certainly living in some tumultuous times. We have a virus and we have riots and protests. Lord, I ask you, I beseech you to take those blackened hearts and heal them. Please heal the people who have been hurt. Please watch over anyone who catches the virus and make their symptoms less. Make it easier for them to breathe and to live. And all of this we ask in your name. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you all. Madam Clerk, may we have a roll call, please?
Mayor Moore,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Cryer,
Here.
Councilmember Bryant,
Here.
Councilmember Evelyn,
Here.
and
Here.
All right, we're going to begin this evening's meeting with a study session presentation by HF&H Consultants regarding the solid waste and wastewater rate study. City Manager Jones.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll introduce Rob Hilton and Morgan McCarthy with HF&H Consultants. And they will be presenting today on solid waste and the wastewater rate study. Turn it over to you guys.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, members of the public who are with us remotely. Glad to be with you tonight. We are presenting to you a number of projects that are all sort of coming together and mostly related to each other. So most of this work has to do with implementing the requirements of state law SB 1383 and the regulations that the regulatory agencies have developed around that. So I'll give you a quick overview of those requirements and then work into what we've done through the contract and through the ordinance to fulfill the requirements of the law, as well as the ways that we've built in some flexibility for the city of Taft so that you aren't stuck with requirements if they evolve or are delayed. We'll then get into the solid waste rate study that is a result, basically how do we fund these new requirements, and the wastewater rate study, which is not to do with SB 1383, but again, as we're looking at the health of the enterprise system in the city, we want to make sure we're looking at the wastewater enterprise as well, because there's some changes there. And we'll present to you the cumulative bill impacts to customers resulting from that and some rate comparisons to other comparable communities. So bear with us a little bit. There are quite a few slides. I want to very quickly touch on SB 1383, though, because this is a driver for a lot of what we're talking about tonight. So I presented a longer form of this presentation to your council and public back when we were all in the room together about a year ago and got into a lot of detail. So I'm going to just recap quickly that SB 1383 requires local governments to set up programs and services for every generator in the state to participate in recycling separation and organic separation. They want to get food waste, green waste, cardboard, paper, things like that out of landfills for concerns of methane generation in their decomposition in landfills. So they want programs to recycle that, and you are required to set up those sorts of programs. You'll have to have ordinances. The law requires that you have ordinances or other enforceable mechanisms to mandate that customers participate in the system, mandate the monitoring system, the inspection system, and so forth. And Morgan will get into some details about what's in those ordinances and how we've fulfilled those requirements in a minimally invasive way as much as we could. Once you've got those ordinances in place, the law requires you to monitor customer participation and, in extreme cases, perform enforcement against customers who are generators who are not compliant with the rules. The state has been leaning very heavily recently on the fact that they've built in about a 6-month compliance window from when somebody gets a first warning to when they would get a fine. And so they've built in quite a bit of wiggle room to be able to work with customers and try and develop solutions that really work for them rather than imposing these fines. It's one of the few little improvements that's been made along the way in SB 1383 is allowing local governments a little bit more time and a little bit more latitude in working with folks before you get to that point. You'll be required to participate and support an edible food recovery system. That's going to be a fairly small scale thing in the town of, in the city of Taft. There aren't many edible food generators, and the county of Kern does a very good job and has a really good system in place. So this is a pretty minimal requirement for you guys. The city will be required to meet certain procurement requirements, some around the purchase and use of compost and mulch, and some around how you purchase paper. And so if recycled content paper is cheaper than virgin content paper, the state wants you to buy recycled content paper to support closing the loop on this. The real challenge here is you have to monitor all of your paper purchases and report that. It's not just about whether you're using the recycled content or not. And then lastly, you're required to perform education and outreach to educate the public about how to use these systems and how they're expected to participate. On top of all of this, they're still working out the final details, but 12 to 15 new reports that will be due to the state every year as well as their ability to call you up and say, within 5 business days, we'll be down to inspect all of your records to demonstrate that you've done these things. So record keeping and reporting systems around this are pretty important too, to make sure that we're lined up. So our primary focus, Taft is a small city. You don't have a large staff to take on all of these responsibilities. You do have a franchise solid waste company that does most of this stuff for you. So the solid waste franchise agreement is really the primary vehicle for delegating the responsibility to do a lot of this stuff and making sure that the programs are provided. So we've been working with Westside Waste for a little over a year now, came to a final agreement, and as I'm sure all of you know, Bob Hampton passed just after we understood we had reached final agreement on the deal, and the company is looking at the deal again at this point, and they've got it going to a meeting of their board of directors, I understand, late this month. And so it's possible that they may be reevaluating things in light of current conditions. So what we're going to present to you tonight is the deal as it was finally negotiated with them and as we understood it. But I did want to make sure you were all aware of that there is a possibility that things may change on us. So the term of the agreement is approximately 10 years, and that's to allow them time to amortize and depreciate the capital that they're going to have to invest at the beginning of the contract. They got to buy a few $400,000 trucks and a couple of $1 million worth of carts and bins and that equipment to provide this service. So in the interest of the ratepayers, we want to give them a nice long period of time to amortize that equipment to kind of match the useful life. We have in your packet a modernized agreement, sort of best practices for smaller communities. We didn't give you the San Jose or Los Angeles agreement. We gave you an agreement that we've used in other Kern County cities like Ridgecrest and California City and Golden Hills Community Services District. But it includes all of those key protections for the city, all of the contract management and risk management stuff that you want to make sure you have, as well as all of those delegated items for SB 1383. Obviously, one of the big deals in this is, well, what's the compensation arrangement? What are we paying them for this? So they've agreed to continue their current compensation of roughly $29,000 a month until such time as we implement the 3-stream collection system. And again, we've built in some triggering so that you've got flexibility about when you do that. But when you implement it, when we get to that point where we say we can't wait anymore, we got to bite the bullet, got to do the thing, it's going to be an additional $10,000 a month. As we did our due diligence and really dug into their books and their numbers around their costs, what we understood was this $10,000 a month covers their capital requirement for implementing all of these new services. It doesn't really pay for them providing the service. What does pay for them providing the services, we're moving the commercial billing responsibility over from the city to the contractor. So they're going to be getting extra compensation resulting from that. They're also going to be unburdening city staff from having to deal with commercial billing, which is more challenging because especially after we implement this 3-stream system, commercial customers change their service levels from time to time, and it results in this mid-cycle billing adjustment. When you're doing property tax roll billing once a year, that creates administrative headache for the city. The way that the company does their billing, it's monthly or bi-monthly, and so they're more nimble about how they adjust that. So transferring that billing responsibility was a bit of a win-win in providing them a little bit more compensation, but also cleaning up the administrative side of it between the two parties. One other shift in responsibility is that historically the city has owned, bought, maintained, replaced the 300-gallon containers that are in the alleyways. And when you're just in a maintenance cycle, that's not a big deal to do. But when we have to capitalize a couple $1 million worth of containers at the beginning or all at once, that's not a position that the city's in. The company is in a position to do some borrowing around that and be able to capitalize that all at once. So we've moved the container ownership responsibility over to the contractor. It also works better for them to deal with the warranty service and the repairs and things like that when they come up. So that's another key sort of responsibility shift. And then the last thing I want to make sure to draw your attention to is that these compensation amounts would be adjusted by a CPI each year to keep track of their increasing costs of providing service. That sort of mechanism has become the standard in the industry, and most companies expect to have some guaranteed escalator on their compensation, or at least some assured mechanism of knowing that as their costs increase, they're going to be given some consideration around that. So CPI has been the way that Kern County has done it, and many other agencies have to sort of simplify this. The last issue around compensation has to do with the recycling surcharge. So we're implementing a recycling system at a time when it costs twice as much to process recyclables to send them off and sell them in a market as it does to put them in a landfill. And the company has the added cost of the recycling facility that they use, and really the closest one available to them is in Bakersfield on 99. And so they got a long haul clear across the valley with these recyclables, and then they got to pay a guy to process them. And so they want to make sure that as long as that condition is present and the recyclables don't have a net value to them, that they're able to get some compensation through the agreement for doing that recycling activity. So we've included some recycling surcharge amounts in the rate schedule that they could charge to commercial customers. They seem to also want that with residential customers, as they have in Kern County. So we may be looking at that issue with them a little bit further, but we've got some concerns about putting guardrails on that to make sure that customers in Taft are not being treated unfairly in some way to customers in the unincorporated area just around that issue. I'll go through these next slides fairly quickly. Basically, the service changes that you'll see around 1383 are going from your 1 container system into a 3 container system where you have garbage, recycling, and organics. That organics includes yard waste and food waste. For single family customers, we're generally going to provide a 96-gallon container for each material type. If you're little old lady or disabled and you can't push your big heavy cart down the road, we do have a smaller cart option for folks or people that maybe don't have as much yard trimmings. So we do have a little bit of optionality available for single family, but we're really trying to deliver the same service to everybody and make sure everybody's paying equally for what they're getting. In multifamily and commercial, it's much more complex though. We want customers to have options about what types of containers they have, how frequently that material gets serviced, because they're generating a lot more material. And they have much different, depending on what type of business you are or what size multifamily, you have different generation profile that needs to be adapted to. So very customer friendly around those service options and trying to be reflective of that. This slide covers all of the things that we've delegated to them that would otherwise fall on the city to do for 1383 compliance. And I'm not going to walk through all of the details, but as you can see with a number of these things, going out and monitoring for contamination in the recycling and organic stream, dealing with the labels and color coding of containers, all of that would be a huge effort for the city to do. And so this is sort of part of their business, and these are things that they can tuck in more naturally and more cost effectively. So as we went through each of these things with them, we tried to understand, is there a cost advantage to the city doing any of these things? And in each case where we delegated something to the company, it was because it was cost advantage to do so. Now this does not have to do with 1383. In addition to the requirements of 1383, as we sat down with staff and said, okay, there's a bunch of stuff you're going to have to do. What do you want to do? What are the things that could be improved in the system absent these state laws that are telling you to do things? And the big thing that both city staff and Westside Waste said was illegal dumping in the alleys has gotten to be a real problem, and we've got to kind of change the dynamic around that. And so historically, both the company and the city have sent crews out through the alleys proactively to patrol, to assess, to clean stuff up. And if, there was a tree there, if there was a couch there, if there was a, water heater there, it just got cleaned up and taken care of. And people got very used to that, and so that illegal dumping became very expensive to manage in that way over time. So we want to transition the program, and this will match with some of the ordinance changes that Morgan will talk about in a little bit, where we're providing convenient opportunities for people at no additional cost to get rid of extra material when they need to. We want them to be responsible and give a call to the company and say, hey, I'm going to put some stuff out. Here's what it is. I do want you to take it. I didn't put my couch out there for my kids to sit in and you took it and I get upset about it. That was meant to be there. And so we've got a bunch of different opportunities for extra pickups and then 2 bulk item events per year per customer at no additional cost to get rid of this stuff. We also aren't Pollyannish enough to think that, well, we'll change this program and all of a sudden the illegal dumping will go away. So we will continue with the illegal dumping cleanup service by Westside Waste within the costs that they've provided, but it'll be a reactive service. The city will go out to identify, is there a problem? Is this something that we could inspect and maybe enforce on the illegal dumping action? And then get Westside involved in getting it collected and hauled off. So the alleys won't all of a sudden become overwhelmed because this went wrong. We've got a safeguard in place, but we really do want to shift the dynamic around this, and for that illegal dumping activity, want to get people more accountable to the right ways of doing things. So with that, I'm going to have Morgan come and talk us through the changes to the solid waste ordinance for 1383 and implement those clean city programs.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, esteemed council. I will be talking to you about the updates to the ordinance that we did, which is very exciting stuff. So anyways, to begin, we ended up changing a couple things for two reasons. To get things into compliance with SB 1383 as well as the clean city policies after talking to staff and finding out kind of what the issues actually were. With illegal dumping and scavenging and stuff like that, we had to kind of beef some things up to make it a little more stringent, hopefully make some behavior changes there, so I'll get into that a little later. So first, starting out, we have some haul requirements that are required through SB 1383, most of which things that need to be in the contract. Some of it's very general, anything that would generally be in a contract, such as effective date, term, etc. Some things very specific to SB 1383, like their responsibilities, who would be required to do certain things, placement of containers, etc. Generator requirements. So I'm not going to dive a lot into this, but for the most part, this is just what's required for commercial businesses as well as multifamily property owners. Mostly so. Multifamily property owners, they need to educate educate their tenants as well as train their employees so that they're doing everything properly. A couple other things there, but I feel like you pretty much get the picture on that. We're also allowing for some waivers, de minimis waiver as well as physical space waiver, so kind of allowing for, if people can actually opt out of this, we allow for that. So that'll make it a little easier to manage. Self-haul and backhaul. So, for instance, if there's a grocery store that decides they're gonna, backhaul back to their shipping center or something like that, basically they just have to manage this material, keep records, and make sure that, it can be inspected. The edible food recovery requirements, this applies to two different tiers of businesses. So after talking with staff, I think that we found maybe there are 4 different businesses in the city that this actually applies to. So not super serious at least, but basically no intentional spoiling of food. And the whole point of this is that any kind of food that can be recovered and donated will be. And they have to keep records and allow for facility inspections, stuff like that. But that's the whole point of this edible food recovery. Some miscellaneous 1383 requirements. With regards to Calgreen, we didn't have any changes there because in your ordinance you already had that it basically updates with any kind of Calgreen requirements. MWELO, the model water efficiency landscape ordinance, we amended that to basically say that it's kind of a refer back like the Calgreen one is, so it will essentially update every time that there is an update if it isn't specific to the provisions that we've had put in there with what construction and landscaping projects have to follow. There is also a procurement policy which we decided to go kind of with an internal policy, essentially around paper procurement. So to the clean city policies, there are 2 different things. We did some amendments to what was already in the code with regards to scavenging, illegal dumping, burying and burning, and as well as encroachment. So For a lot of those, we kind of beefed up the provisions so that we can hopefully change some of the behavior around what is actually happening in the city. Especially with the encroachment, I know that there was a lot of issues there after talking with your city manager about that. So just kind of changing things to make sure that people that were kind of going around things can't do that anymore. And if they are, hopefully they'll get caught for it and we can fine them, etc. The new additions were with regards to 1383, so mandatory subscription levels with people that actually, own the property, etc. Service level adjustments where basically if there is constantly a nuisance and there's overloads, and the city can go in and say, okay, well, you need more service. The waste accumulation, just kind of a nuisance situation, as well as different enforcement provisions. It just kind of refers back to what your enforcement provisions already are, as well as different source separation requirements. And back to Rob for the rate study.
Thank you. All right, so that's what we're gonna do. How do we pay for it? What's it gonna cost us, right? So we looked at the current financial state of the Solid Waste Enterprise Fund. We looked at the changes in dynamics to internal staffing, to the costs of the outside contract, and tried to understand how all of that will impact what you're currently, or what you'll be paying over the next 5 years. So currently, oops, that's not the button I wanted. Morgan, can you go back and hit function F5? Thank you. And I'll skip forward. So the escape key and the laser pointer key are different. That's the laser pointer key, which doesn't work up here anyways. So these are your current rates: single family at $46.79, multifamily at $47.05 per unit. As we dove into the cost of service analysis, one of the things that we found is that that's no longer supportable to have a different rate per unit for single family and multifamily. They're effectively receiving identical services. So one of our recommendations that you'll see going forward is to align those so that you're charging the same amount going forward. But that's not the big deal. The big deal is there are some significant increases in costs of operation, some personnel costs internally, but really the big piece is the outside contract costs with Westside Waste, that once we implement that additional compensation to them to implement this three-stream system, there are cost increases, and this orange dotted bar here represents revenue from current rates. So with your current cost structure, you're fine. You're bringing in plenty of revenue. You actually have been contributing to your reserves over the last couple of years. Good on you. But as these costs go up, what we'll find is that revenue is inadequate, and by the fiscal 22-23 in the solid waste fund, we go negative in fund balance.
If I may, I'm going to interrupt you for just 1 second. Basically, I want everybody out there in TV land to understand exactly what you said. It's really quite critical. Go back one slide. Okay, so fiscal year 2019, 2020, you can see that the costs and the monies collected are a little bit higher than the actual costs. So like you said, we contribute to the reserve fund, planning ahead. It's a responsible business plan. It is funded at a proper level, and we are putting money away. The additional costs that are going to be incurred and that ramping up of the costs, thusly the additional charges that are going to be affected every person, every family, every household, every commercial building, are in direct correlation to Senate Bill 1383.
Yes, sir.
Okay, were it not for Senate Bill 1383, then we would be fine and we would continue being fine.
Yeah, you'd have cost escalation that looked more like 2.5% or 3% a year, not these more dramatic jumps that you're seeing in this
Okay,
schedule.
so this is not for lack of planning, nor for the lack of the installation of a very workable, sustainable business plan. This is a response to a Senate bill. This is a response to a demand by Sacramento.
Well, and I would even go further to applaud the city for responsibly getting ahead of the planning for the implementation of the Senate bill and not waiting until you were at year 3 and you crashed the fund because you incurred all these costs without getting ahead of the planning.
Okay, and then lastly, I will let you get back on track, but I want everybody out there to also know that we as a city, and whether it's the city manager or myself or any of the other council members, we implored Sacramento and our governor to let us delay this. When you think about what could possibly be a worse timeline to increase the cost of these things to the consumer and to businesses than post-pandemic recovery. I mean, it could not possibly be worse. We implored the government to delay this, and we're, like you say, trying to be ahead of it so that we can cushion and soften the blow, the fiscal impact over the course of many years. But when you think about what is going on these days and who's getting a free ride, this was not a free ride. We just wanted to apply some common sense to this in recognition of the pain, the fiscal pain this is going to actually have on everybody at the worst possible time. So we have tried, we will continue to try, but I want everybody out there to know that thus far, the governor and Sacramento has covered their ears and turned a blind eye to the plight of you, the people, because of this. So now I will let you go on. It was the right time, so thank you very much for your indulgence.
Absolutely, thank you. And maybe to amplify that point and also to make sure that you're aware of a tool that's available to you, one of the big assumptions in this cost modeling is the timing of the implementation of SB 1383. So we've assumed that January 1 of 2022, when the regs currently say you'll have to comply, this modeling assumes you would comply. But we've built that compensation mechanism into the agreement where you don't have to pay the increased costs until you tell them. So if the Assembly and the Senate get their act together and put a bill that would delay 1383 implementation, you've got a tool to delay your cost. And so that would have an effect on this rate modeling, and if that were to happen, Craig would give us a call, we'd rerun the numbers and let you guys know here's what has happened as a result of that change.
All right, thank you.
Can I ask a question, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
If you wouldn't mind going back to that slide previously.
This guy?
So as of today, we're currently in fiscal 2020, 2021, right? So today, our projected cost for this fiscal year, as part of 1383, is $716,000, $105,000 more than the previous fiscal year. And that's with us doing nothing. So we're going to be eating.
No, that is beginning the implementation of 1383. So there is some staffing costs and some implementation costs that we've assumed there that, again, if it gets delayed, you won't incur some of that.
Okay, I was just curious what the cost difference was between basically holding on from now until January 1 of 2022. What would our costs be there? So we kind of have the accurate viewpoint of where our fund balance is and what our annual costs are, and what would they be if we implemented those today, which is what you present here.
That's basically what we've.
Okay, I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. That is an important nuance, though. I mean, what you're seeing here is a ramping up of the costs as you go from planning phase to implementation phase to ongoing operations. And so you're seeing the cost curve flatten right here in years 3 through 5, right? Because we've got all the stuff in place and we're not having one-time costs for starting up new reporting systems or whatever.
Sure.
So we don't have much choice. We need more revenue to fund this increased cost system, or by year 3 we've got a problem, and by year 5 we've got a major problem. So when we went to the Public Works Committee, we presented them with a couple of different scenarios, and we even brought out the spreadsheets and played with different iterations. And what the Public Works Committee recommended that we present to you is the concept of not adjusting rates for fiscal 2021. Because of the access that the public has to these meetings at this point and the magnitude of these adjustments, the Public Works Committee felt very strongly that we delay this if we have the ability to and have those public hearings and do the public process and all of that over the next year, so that in July of 2021 we would be prepared for the adjustments. And then they asked that the needed increases in rates be smoothed evenly over the remaining years. So you see a 0% adjustment and then a series of 15.44% adjustments to the rates to get you to where you need to be.
A part of the thought process, if I may, of the Public Works Committee, because I'm a part of that Public Works Committee, is knowing that during the current pandemic, it is very difficult for the public, the people who are going to be affected by this, to be right here where they belong, so that we can do this in a very transparent, open manner, which is the way we try to govern. To do things like this when everybody's locked down at home, is less than transparent. And there's a saying about avoiding the appearance of impropriety. It's a legal statement, but I truly believe that that is what government is doing at this point in time. Everybody stay home and everybody stay locked down. Don't come here and participate, be a part of government. And during the course of all that, we're going to start slapping you with double-digit increases for the next 4 years for services. I think that's just an absolutely pathetic display. We are forced as a community to do that. So when the Public Works considered that, we wanted to, like you said, not do it that first year, knowing what's going on with the pandemic, hoping we can get things back up. And then we had to kind of get into it so that the increases didn't get too large in any one year. So what you see is a blending of all of those concerns, trying to do the most responsible thing for the consumer. That is the plan that we came up with.
Absolutely. That's actually kind of what I was looking at, was, my question was more like, where's the revenue go once you implement? Because there's your cost, but you don't see the revenue increasing, but that's what you should.
That's it, yeah. This is the other piece. This is your fund balance for the Solid Waste Enterprise Fund. And one of the, again, keys to your ability to not have a year one rate increase and to smooth over the remaining years is you've built up a bit of a fund balance. And what we're doing is using that, maybe overusing it a little bit there in year 4, but by year 5 of the plan, we've got you back where you need to be in terms of your reserve target. You'll want to watch this closely over these years. Obviously, I'm sitting here shining my crystal ball in the middle of a COVID shutdown, telling you what your cost and revenue reality is going to be over the next 5 years. And this is going to change that, period. And so you're going to need to keep an eye on this, and it may be that in year 2 or year 3, you've got to come back and say, gee, maybe that year 3 and 4 number need to go up or something. Or you may find we've delayed implementation of 1383 and we can hang out for a year and not have as big of an increase. So all of that to say, watch the ship as it's going. We're in uncharted water. This is what the rate adjustments work out to on a per dwelling unit basis. As you can see in that first year, the percentage adjustment is a little bit different as we bring the 2 rates together, but then in the out years it's all consistent. And really the headline is we're going from about $47 to about $83 for this service. So that's the residential. That's what's in the rate study. The rate study covers what is billed through the property taxes because that's covered by Prop 218. The commercial rates here are discretionary. They are not an incident of property ownership. They're a subscription service that businesses and multifamily properties sign up for. So, or sorry, not multifamily. In your case, multifamily is part of the part of the residential billing. Businesses sign up for. But we wanted to be transparent about the rates. The city regulates the maximum rate that the company can charge. And so we wanted to make sure in the light of day, even though it wasn't part of the rate study Prop 218 content, these are the rates that the company could charge for garbage service, recycling service, and organic service by size of container and frequency of service. So that's the solid waste rate study. I'll pivot over into the wastewater rate study, which again has nothing to do with 1383, but because we're looking at the enterprises and doing the rate study, Craig asked us to take a look at the sewer enterprise as well. So again, you're billing all of the residential and commercial customers in the sewer system. So there are a large number of different charge types as opposed to residential where there's single family and multifamily. You have different charges based on the type of business you operate or the type of use you have for the sewer system. All of this gets billed via the Kern County tax rolls. So, unlike the solid waste system where the issue was the implementation of new 1383 requirements, in the sewer system, the issue is really the creation of a capital improvement reserve fund. And so what you're seeing here in the purple is adding about $500,000 a year in CIP expenditures that you're going to have around the sewer collection system throughout the city. And historically, those are things that have been underserved, underfunded, and just haven't been done, and it's led to greater maintenance costs over time. There are also some costs in here to do with the shared facility with Kern County and the debt service payments against that. So, similar to the solid waste fund, you guys have done a good job over the years of building up a bit of a reserve. And that allows us to sustain these cost increases until really the 5th year of the projections. And then by that 5th year, we go negative. So similar to the solid waste system, we have this sort of strategy of using those reserves to soften and smooth that adjustment over time. Same logic behind it, but a little bit lower magnitude. So in the sewer fund, you'd have a 0% adjustment, as we talked about. We don't want to do the adjustment in this first year, and that would then require about a 9.5% adjustment each of the successive years. And like in the solid waste fund, this demonstrates how we sort of elegantly use those reserves that you've accumulated, bring you to your reserve target, maintain that reserve target over time. This is what the schedule of rates by use type would increase by. Just wanted to be very transparent. No matter who you were, this is what your rate would be in a given year based on these projections. So folks can kind of find themselves on this schedule. And then this is the combination of the wastewater and the solid waste rates. This may be more helpful for us though. This is our residential annual bill impact over the term of the planning horizon. And what you see is we go from $653 annual cost for these two services to a little over $1,000 annual cost for these two services. So this is a significant jump in the rates, and even with the smoothing logic that we have, you see how the two kind of come together. Now, for better or worse, you're still in pretty good shape compared to other communities like you who provide the services that you provide. So we did a survey of other smaller communities that aren't in the Bay Area or LA Basin that have situations similar to you. And what we find is right now, among the ones we looked at, you're the second lowest annual cost of service. Once we implement the 21-22, you'll be still the second lowest cost of service amongst the group. And by the 2024-2025 rate, you'll be sort of mid-pack. Now that's important to note that that's mid-pack in 2024-2025 against cities today who have not yet done the things you're doing with 1383 and may have their own sewer system issues, right? So while you're doing all of this, when we benchmark you against other smaller sized communities in areas like yours, this isn't unreasonable. And again, as we went through the numbers for West Side Waste and really scrutinized and did the due diligence around that, this isn't a deal where they're getting fat because these rates have gone up. As I said, it's really covering their capital, and they're somewhat at risk on the other pieces. So I feel like while this is a large magnitude increase, it is very rational in the way that we've arrived at it. So that's my presentation, and I'm available for any questions you guys may have. I imagine there could be a couple.
Mayor?
Okay, go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem, if you will.
I have a few questions and stuff, and for the, for everybody know that I've been appointed to be on waste management, solid waste management deal, and I represent all the cities in Kern County. And so I was involved with that program, but believe me, I was very vocal. I wasn't the only one vocal about it. A lot of other board members were very vocal and had a lot of concerns about it, but the state's mandating this to all the cities and the counties in California. And we try to do a common sense approach, but there is no common sense. It just don't make sense. The question I would have, like a lot of our containers here in our waste containers, we have like those 300 gallon, and usually one of those do about 4 residences. Now, on the ones, the new receptacles and stuff, will that be 1 for 4, or you got to have one, each one and have to, so you can't save money by having one, because I guarantee you, like my waste, I got garbage disposal for the food waste, and I got a hungry dog. Take care of the rest of it. I don't put in there. So, so I have basically almost 0 waste as far as putting in containers, but yet I'm going to be penalized along with many other citizens here in this town here that pay this. And to me, it reminds me of PERS in a smaller scale. You know, it just keeps going up. Now, after the 5th year, which is going to be up there, where it affects the fixed people on fixed income. They can't really afford it. They can barely make their, paying the garbage fees and sewerage and in their livelihood, and they don't get a pay raise like they do every year as it goes up on the cost just for garbage alone. It doesn't affect it, and I just feel sorry for the citizens that are on low income or on a fixed income. On our far as like we mow our yard and stuff, I think the street sweeper picks up our lawn clippings and stuff. So really, will that change too, or?
Yeah, so in terms of your question about the container size and the capacity that you'll be adding overall capacity for each household. Currently, you have about 75 gallons per pickup, times 2 pickups a week, you have about 150 gallons. In the new system, each household will get about 280 gallons of total service between the 3 streams. 96 gallons of garbage, 96 gallons of recycle, 96 gallons of organics, yard trimmings, and food scraps. So overall, your capacity is increasing. Now, to your point of, you do some very responsible things. You put it down the garbage disposal, you feed it to the dog, you probably eat up the leftovers, those sorts of things, and that's fine. That's the reality of the situation. What they found in places where these food scrap programs have been implemented is a household will set up somewhere between 3 and 8 pounds per week of food scraps. So it's not a lot of stuff. You don't need a huge container just for that. The huge container is because you got a yard and you got trees and grass and things like that, and so that's why we're providing that there. We also want to make sure people have enough capacity for their stuff. We don't want to end up taking overall capacity away from them.
Now, for the first 2 years, there's no, as far as the residents, there is no fines or anything for the first 2 years. Now, after that, how much are the fines for the first offense, and what does it take to get the first offense?
So the penalties are matched to your administrative citation process, and the escalation matches that. So if there's a penalty to a generator in the city, I believe it starts at $50, escalates to $100, escalates to $250. But before that, there is a notice and order to correct. Then 150 days later, there's a notice of violation with intent to issue a citation. Then there's another 90-day correction process where they can come into compliance before you go out and re-inspect and cite them. So again, there's some process in front of the citations.
And the city is responsible for that, to check
Correct.
it.
Yes.
And if the cities don't do it, I know all the answers already pretty much, because I went through all that baloney. But if the city don't follow it, the city gets fined.
Correct.
And the state will come in there and take over. Basically, they'll come in there and do the inspection and the fining and all that. So at the end, we're all penalized. It's another deal of government coming in here and telling us how to do it, when to do it, and where to do it, and all the above. I missed something, but it's not a good deal for the public doing it when the state comes in there. And it's also, having a business, and keeping track of where the waste goes to. I know I'm in a farming business, and we do have a processing plant, and we also have a packing shed, and we also have a lot of wastewater. And well, I can tell you what, there's a lot of issues just that alone. The wastewater, we use our wastewater to water our grapes and stuff, and we spend a lot of money for the transporting underground, getting rights to go through different people's property to get disposed of it. And the state will, even though it's water, it's clean water, and it got some say carrot color to it, they'll go ahead and they'll make us go out there and test, drill on the ground, test it, and see if there's any mitigation, migrating of the water in the ground soil and the water system and all that. There's a lot of paperwork and cost involved. I'm just talking about one industry right here, count about how many more in our size. But the paperwork involved to track it. We sell our calls and stuff to the dairies and to different cattle companies and stuff to go. But there's still, you have a paper trail with tar and all that, where everything goes and how much and all that, and it's a lot of work. But right now, I'm just going to talk about the city of Taft and the public here. Why can't, it's been asked, I already know the answer already on it, but you think that common sense is, why do you need each one for each family when you got one big container and keep the cost down? Instead of buying one for each home, when we have one for every 4 or something, to keep the cost down and be, I'm trying to find out right where I get going again. My mind goes faster than I can think sometimes, but, you know, to keep common sense, keep the cost down to the public.
I understand why you get to the shared service being cheaper. It actually is less productive because of the type containers that they're using and the fact that they do the service in the alleys. If we had to do 3 services in the alley instead of just the one, you'd have an access issue and you'd have a productivity issue. And so the company was pretty clear that this curbside approach with each house having their own smaller container that was portable was a more cost effective, and that's what we've seen in
So
other
every
places.
week or whatever it is, you have to take it from your house or the
Roll it
porch
out to
or
the
the
curb.
backyard and take it all the way to the front yard instead of putting it in the alley, or leave it there in the alley.
Yep. And that's why in the ordinances, we've also got some provisions around, okay, you put your cart out at this time before service day and you get it back the next day and you don't leave it out all week and those sorts of things.
All right. Any other questions? Yes, Councilman?
I have a number of them, and I apologize if I take your questions, guys, but, and I apologize if I kind of go back and forth, because I wrote them down as we were going through the presentation, if you'll employ.
Go right
me, Mr.
ahead.
Mayor. If I understand correctly, ideally, we would not implement this till January 1 of 2022?
Or later if the law gets delayed.
Okay,
If we're successful in petitioning the government to postpone this based on current issues, I mean, it ideally would be several years.
yep, or ever.
But, yeah, roger that, or ever.
Perfect.
Idealism has an expense. It costs money.
Right here, that's what.
Yes,
we're
sir,
talking
that's
about.
correct.
Coinciding with that, the revenue rates would not increase until that time, as well as the costs outside of basic CPI cost increase, those types of things. Okay, that's a
Right.
good thing to know. Can you give us an example of what a de minimis waiver, who might ultimately qualify for something like that?
So my de minimis waiver example is a body shop or a real estate office. So you get an environment like that with a small number of employees going into the business. They bring their sack lunch or they go down and get takeout or whatever. And at the end of the week, you haven't generated enough, sandwich crusts and leftover chips and whatever to be sufficient in quantity to have to participate in the food separation. But at a body shop or a real estate office, I'm getting cardboard boxes, I'm getting reams of paper. I probably need to sign up for that blue can program because I'm making enough paper, cardboard, whatever, that I should sign up for that. So what the de minimis waiver allows you to do is go business by business and say, okay, you're a packing house, you don't have a lot of paper and cardboard, you have a lot of food scraps, you need a green bin, you don't need a blue bin. And the space constraint waiver, similarly, if you go into a place and somebody's got room for 1 additional container but not 2, or maybe they don't have room for any additional containers, you have some latitude to let them off and not have future enforcement problems.
Okay.
So we've maximized the ability to be flexible with people where the law allows us to.
Very good. I mean, I think for a number of our businesses, especially downtown, which are service providers or, small trinket
Yep.
people, they'll be able to qualify for that, which is fantastic. Let's see here. Can you describe me, what is the extra pickup that was mentioned as far as the additional service that are provided?
So the idea was if you got your kid had their big birthday party and you generated a bunch of extra stuff one week, that you could call the company and they would come out and do an extra service of your container for you.
And I can have up to 4 of those in a.
Each year.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's very nice.
So if you got 4 kids, you can have 4 birthday parties.
Very good, very good. Let's see here. Potential impacts on the number of service days. Obviously, I'm not gonna be picking up every can, especially if you've got 3 every day.
Thank you.
Is that left up to the hauler, or is that something the city dictates?
So they will set the service days. Each customer will have 1 service day instead of 2. So all of the commodities will go out on one day and all of them will be collected on that day and the customer will be notified. I believe that the company is trying to plan to be in town 3 different days so that they're available to do the cleanups and things like that, and then they serve the outlying areas.
So I'd basically put out all 3 of my red, blue, and gray can, whatever it is, out there one day. That's good, because I think doing any more would be confusing and a hassle, which is very good. Would you touch on what the recycling surcharge, who might be impacted? Is that passed on to the city and the city passes that on by way of our rates? Or is that direct?
The way that it works in the county is that the Board of Soups has approved all of the haulers to charge an extra percentage, and it's been ramping up over a few years, but an extra percentage surcharge to each bill. For residents, it was like 50 cents a month or something like that at the beginning, and it'll ratchet up to about $2 a month by the end. For businesses, it's larger because the size of their container and the amount of stuff they have is larger. One of the things as we work with Westside Waste on this issue is we want to rationalize it to what they're paying. If they're incurring an additional cost for this, and it's real and it's because we have to have this program, we don't want to be unreasonable, but at the same time, we don't want to end up adding profit and adding fat to the costs through this thing. So we're happy to have some discussion around this. We just want to make sure it's reasonable with.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't think there's anybody up here that would say we want to do any of our service providers, especially the local businesses, wrong.
Right.
But we also understand we have to survive day to day just like they do, and probably us in perpetuity, where we don't know how long they're actually going to survive.
Yeah.
Especially in California. Mr. Mayor, I think that's all I've got.
All right.
So I'll check one more thing. And you said that, one more thing if you wouldn't mind, 12 to 15 new reports required regarding simply paper procurement.
No, not just paper procurement. It's 12 to 15 new reports to respond to all of the SB 1383 requirements.
Do we have a time estimate on how much those might cost? I mean, I'm just spitball.
Westside Waste has agreed to take on a fair bit of the documentation, record keeping, and reporting. It's probably a quarter-time person for the city, maybe a half-time person for the city, just to deal with
Annually?
record keeping and reporting, yeah.
Which is, and I might add, that's a critical component of all of this, and I'm glad you brought that up. I made that same note. When you think about the fact that 12 to 15 additional reports have got to be seen to, and then they can be audited, if 12 to 15 reports are being generated by every municipality headed towards Sacramento, and state government has got to man up, or woman, whatever the case may be, has got to have sufficient amount of manpower to review all of those and scrutinize those, then what are we doing? We're growing government, and we're growing it big time. So you're right, not just on a local level, but on a state level. So thank you for bringing that up. Councilman Whiting, any additional questions, sir?
No, sir, I was on the committee and I'm very familiar with this view and
Roger that.
no questions, thank you.
All right, Councilman Evelyn.
Just a couple things. Actually, Josh stole part of my thunder and you just nailed one of the other ones. So the generation of additional bureaucracy in government obviously is going to come. But just for my own curiosity, what are these containers made of? Just the plastic, the ones that we already see?
Yeah, either high density or medium density polyethylene.
Okay, and do these containers already exist somewhere magically? Or are we?
We're building an industry, my friend.
In the interest, in the ideology of environmentally being responsible, we're producing this gigantic individual residential amounts of plastic bins in order to be more responsible environmentally.
To recycle plastic.
I mean, am I missing something, or is that actually true?
No, sir, you nailed it.
Do they make these compostable, the bins?
The bins, no, they are fully recyclable though, and the companies that sell them bring them back, chip them, and put them into their new product. But it's 20 to 40% recycled content. They're not closed loop systems, so they're buying lots of virgin petroleum.
Okay, one more thing on the projection of the enforcement side of this. To me, that's gonna be an absolute nightmare. We send out the trash police to check everybody's can and go, you haven't generated enough here and you've generated this is in the wrong bin.
That's really the progress that, through the lobbying efforts of industry groups and local government, the regs have changed through the drafts. And so what started in the way that you just described, you're gonna have to send inspectors out, lift lids, keep up after people. They've really taken a lot of the monitoring and inspection that would result in an enforcement action. They've taken a lot of that out. They have a desk review that you do of people's service levels once a year rather than actually going on site and looking at things. They have a complaint-based system so that, as Morgan was talking about, if there's a multi-tenant environment property owner and that property owner is saying, no, I'm not going to allow you to recycle, then if somebody complains, you have to go out and talk to that property owner and say, come on, you know, don't make us fine you.
Rate generated and actual.
Yeah, and then, as I said, they went from a very short timeline for implementing the enforcement to a much longer one where it'll take about 6 months of you working with somebody and them telling you, no, not gonna do it, before you get to the point of having to write a citation. And to the other council member's point, that won't happen until 2024. So you'll have 2 full years of sort of soft rollout, get everybody on board, try and do it the nice way. And then for those people that have been recalcitrant, there's still another 6-month run room before a citation gets issued. So I think that is one of the big wins. They've really taken that away. And then the last win we got in the most recent draft was if you observe contamination, in other words, somebody put the wrong thing in the wrong container, you don't have to fine them. It doesn't have to be a penalty. It can just be education. So I think, well, at the beginning, we had this specter of, you know, the recycling cops going out there and really that being a large effort. The way it's shaped up, I think it's going to be much smaller, but what it's going to be is education and outreach in advance of that enforcement action to get people on board. And so that's where Westside Waste is going to commit some resources and provide that direct outreach and assistance to the businesses to make sure they don't get to that point. That's their goal, that's our goal.
One of the other things that I mentioned about that is, oh, I'm sorry, is the additional idea of yet another unfunded mandate generated by California, pushed down on the individual cities and or counties is, I mean, is there some tail end of the you know what? I'm not even gonna say it. I just, I'm to the point now where it's almost an expectation in California at this point.
You know, I don't think that you're not wrong. I think that this is a huge undertaking for Cal Recycle. And as the mayor said, they're gonna have to do some resourcing up and reorganizing. And so this may be a big enough thing that they have to take a break for a couple of years and give us time to implement this, because it really is a massive undertaking for the state.
And that's really all I have.
All right, thank you very much, and very pertinent points, because in the beginning, I will tell you, Councilman, that the first concept of this was that after mandatory implementation, the state, for the first 2 years, would send their trash police out, and if they observed cross-contamination, then the state trash police had the ability to fine the municipality $5,000 per incident. This was the original verbiage and concept, and then 2 years into it, after we had developed our own trash police in order to keep the city from being fined, then our trash police would be able to go out there and preemptively fine the homeowner to avoid the fine to the municipality. So that was the beginning of it, and that was horribly ridiculous, like you say. So we've been able to change this a little bit prior to the rollout, so not nearly as bad and evil as it may seem. And then beyond that, there was a time when there was a great deal of money in recycling. But I know, having spoken with a lot of people in the business, one of the big issues that they're having now is cardboard recycling. The Chinese cardboard is very problematic, and you cannot take it to recycling areas, and they will not accept it, and it costs you money. So you collect it, and you think, okay, my reward for collecting all of this and separating it and hauling it is going to be money. Not so much. No, you actually haul it over there, and then you pay them to take it. So these things can change. They can go either way. It can either become less expensive given time based on global implications, or it can become more expensive. So those numbers that we're looking at, those are forecast numbers. They can be exacerbated based on the CPI, or they can be exacerbated based on global implications regarding recycling, because there was a time you'd get $400 a ton for scrap iron, and it would, you know, go and see trains over to China, and it was worth some money. Now it's not, and we're gonna have to pay to get rid of it. So this is not going to be an easy task. It's going to cost money. It's gonna hit those on fixed income, the elderly, because when you think about it, some people would say, well, that's not a lot of money. I mean, what, a couple $100 extra a year? Well, when you think about people on fixed incomes and people retired, that couple $100 a year comes out of what is left of their discretionary funds. So if their household fund is $2,200 a month, and at the end of all of those bills that must be paid, which includes food and insurance and medical and PG&E and whatnot, then what do they have left of that 2,200? Perhaps they have 450 left. Well, if you're going to take 200 of their 450 of their discretionary funds away, all of a sudden it becomes a great deal of money, doesn't it? That's 50% of their available discretionary funds. So this is not to be taken lightly. We have not taken it lightly, and we are not done. And we will continue to try to get our voices heard in Sacramento, because idealists seem to forget those who always get dealt the bad cards, and this is going to be one of those programs. All right. Good discussion. Thank you very much. It was a good presentation, and you all did a great job of helping us understand this. I hope everybody understands that what was presented here is probably as responsibly as a municipality is going to be able to roll this out. And so we thank you for your presentation. I want to thank everybody who was involved, and thanks for the discussion. You have any closure on this, City Manager Jones?
No, sir.
All right. Thank you all very much. Next up, item number 2, solid waste and wastewater rate study. City Manager Jones.
Thank you, Mayor. The City of Taft and HF&H Consultants have been working together since 2019 on requirements of SB 1383. City's Public Works Committee met on June 9, 2020, reviewed the rate study, and provided recommendations regarding timing and approach to the needed proposed rate increases. A solid waste and wastewater rate study and proposed rate increase. This rate study looks at the next 5 years of financial planning and rate setting for the city's solid waste and sewer enterprises. Study recommends phased rate increases as shown in the presentation for both utilities to fully fund the implementation of required programs, services, and capital improvements, debt service, and the city's direct costs associated with providing and managing those services. The rate increases are necessary to maintain the viability of the enterprises, and a failure to implement the recommended rate increases may lead to insolvency in both funds within a couple of fiscal years. And this is just another direction from council for us to move forward with the Prop 218 process.
All right, thank you very much. And to reiterate, part of the reason that the blow will be as soft as it is over the course of those years is because the processes that we had in place and the rates we had in place have allowed us to build up some reserve funds. Those reserve funds will actually fund the increases for the first few years. So it's not going to just fall straight in the laps. Instead of seeing 15.4%, we're not going to hit people with a 60% increase on the first year. So that is, I guess, the good
This
side.
again is just to start the process, which is a very lengthy process that includes public meetings and hearings. And so this is not a vote to make the increases today. This is just, we need to start working towards that process and setting those meeting dates. And
This will require and deserves a great deal of community outreach and community participation. They need to understand what's going on, and just one simple meeting won't be enough. So that's all a part of this. At this time, the recommendation is a motion to direct staff to start the Proposition 218 process for the needed solid waste and wastewater rate increases. Oh, that's fine.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any additional discussion? Councilman Whiting? Gentlemen, any additional discussion? All right, I have a motion and a second. Oh, I'm sorry. Councilman Bryant made the motion. The second was Councilman Whiting.
Mayor Pro Tem Pryor,
Yes.
Councilmember Bryant,
Yes.
Councilmember Eveland,
yes.
Councilmember Whiting,
Yes.
and Mayor Nora.
Yes, pass on a 5-0 vote. Thank you all very much. Next up, item number 3, review of draft franchise agreement with Westside Waste Management. City Manager Jones.
Thank you, Mayor. I will skip the statement here since it was covered pretty extensively in the
Okay. I would have to agree, and I don't know if there's going to be
This
additional.
was placed on the agenda to give the council an opportunity to review where we're at now with the proposed franchise agreement, to offer any comments or any questions you may have as it pertains to where we're at today.
Well, in order to do that, the recommendation is to review the new franchise agreement with Westside Waste Management and give input. Well, we just went through and reviewed that, and I believe the discussion regarding that was pretty clear, but does anybody have any additional comments or questions regarding the development of the franchise agreement? It makes sense for it to be a 10-year agreement when you think about the size of the capital investment that is required in order to kick this thing off. If one was going to only offer a 5-year contract or a 4-year contract, then the cost of that contract would have to be substantially higher in order to, depreciate the capital investment that one has to make. So that is why the 10-year contract, and it does make sense. Okay, it would appear that everybody is comfortable with the review as well as the description of that. All right, any other questions regarding that? No? Okay. Next up, item number 4. Public hearing on costs and placement of liens on abated properties. Comments are to be received as stated in the above policy. City Manager Jones?
Thank you, Mayor. The properties abated were 313 Kern Street with abatement cost of $508.15, and 157 Center Street with an abatement cost of $8,883, which was a total tear down on a vacant structure. Properties owners have been notified by certified mail and posting on said property in accordance with the Taft City Municipal Code of cost incurred. The owners were also notified of the time and place of this public hearing, whereby council will hear any objections or protests from the property owners or any other interested parties.
All right, thank you very much, sir. The recommendation is to conduct a public hearing regarding the statement of expense. So I'm going to open that public hearing. Anybody wishing to speak on behalf or in opposition to the resolution of the City Council of the City of Taft approving and confirming the cost for the abatement of the nuisance at 157 Center Street, Taft, California, APN number 031-430-02-8, in the amount of $8,883.71. Madam Clerk, did we receive any communication regarding that? No, we did not, so there will be nobody. The motion regarding the resolution of the City Council of the City of Taft approving and confirming the costs for the abatement of the nuisance at 313 Kern Street, Taft, California, APN number 031-000-07-6, in the amount of $508.15. We did receive through the mail a request to address the City Council in person. And that request comes from Mr. Lawrence Siebert. Is that correct? So I am going to attempt, the city clerk has been trying to attempt to get a hold of this individual at the phone number that they have given us to make certain that they're going to be ready. And now I am going to try to get a hold of Mr. Siebert.
Yes, thank you for calling. Please call, leave your name and number, and I'll get back with you. Once again, thank you for calling. This is Larry. Bye.
Mr. Siebert, this is Mayor Dave Knorr with the City of Taft calling you regarding to your request to address the City Council in this evening's meeting. We're sorry that you were unable to make the meeting. Thank you, sir. Okay, at this time, I would entertain a motion to adopt resolutions entitled Resolution of the City Council of the City of Taft approving and confirming the cost for the abatement of the nuisance at 157 Center Street, Taft, California, APN number 031-430-02-8 in the amount of $8,883.71, as well as a resolution of the City Council of the City of Taft approving and confirming the cost for the abatement of the nuisance at 313 Kern Street, Taft, California, APN number 031-000-07-6 in the amount of $508.15.
So moved.
And a second.
I have a motion and a second. Any additional discussion regarding these issues, gentlemen?
I'd like to make a comment.
Yes, sir, you may.
I've been familiar with the process here in the city of Taft for these nuisance abatements for a great many years. And I know that the city of Taft makes a lot of contact with these folks. We practically beg them to clear these things. And it's only when it finally gets to this point that, and occasionally, we have people actually stand up and say something. Usually we just have to take the bull by the horns and take care of it, and it ends up costing the property owner some money, and usually ends up on a lien. And but the city has to put this money out. A lot of these things could have been very easily rectified had the owners of the property actually listened to the very good advice and suggestions of the city of Taft and its personnel in regarding these nuisance abatements, and they don't. And we don't even see them here in the meetings. They don't call in. Can't get them on the phone, obviously. But we've been dealing with this for a long time, and it's kind of sad to watch. You know, I think that you know, here's the bottom line: we're going to step up. We're going to do what we need to do as a city, and that's what everyone really needs to understand: is we do take these things seriously. We are going to act on these things, and if it costs us a few bucks, we are going to make sure that they are not a nuisance. That's what we do here. So if you want to stand up for yourself, you have to actually get involved. You have to make phone calls. You have to show up, write a letter, whatever. But until we start hearing from these people, you know, they're just going to get tagged. And I have no feeling for them.
Well, it would be best if they responded to the original communique and took care of the issue that is brought forth to them. It's in the best interest of the public good and public safety. Otherwise, they wouldn't have gotten notified. So I would have to agree. Take pride in the fact that you live and own property in the city of Taft, and that pride will show through, and you certainly won't come afoul of code enforcement.
Mr. Mayor, I do have one question, and city attorney may be able to answer this, just so everyone understands how long a process this is. I mean, it's safe to say somebody would have at least 90 days from the date of initial notice to.
Well, at least it's almost impossible to.
Usually more.
Paperwork done, confirm the ownership, get the lot book, and get a warrant that's necessary in less than that. It's a very lengthy process.
So maybe double that, even 180 days or more.
Certainly.
So you have ample opportunity, and at a time when cash comes at a premium, when expenses continue to rise and revenue continues to slow, the taxpayers are saddled with an additional debt and additional expense that we weren't expecting, and that's $10,000 we could be spending on staff. It's $10,000 we could be spending on roads. It's $10,000 we could be spending on something productive. Instead, this is productive, but it's productive in a way that we would rather not.
We would much rather not spend that money.
And to answer Councilman Bryant, over the years, since I used to oversee code enforcement, I can tell you that some of these people will intentionally delay that process by promising to abate that nuisance, and then they do a very poor job or just enough to get by, and then a month later they're back to doing it again. Yep. And then we have to go back and do the re-notification again. We have to start the process all over. Some of these people have been, and I won't say who, I'm just saying that there are some people that have been on this hook for years until they finally, we get enough time and energy and money and process, actually do the abatement and then lien their properties. And so, the process I've seen as little as 6 months, but it could take as long as a year in some cases, depending on what it is that has to be abated, especially if there's asbestos in the process and you have to do cleanup or there's some dirt work. It just depends.
Sure.
But it can be a long process, and it's not an easy process.
One other thing I guess we might ask is, it's easy to allocate direct costs, you know, your cost for demo or your cost for permitting or whatever might come up, remediation. Do we allocate staff costs for the hours or alcohol time that they
Yes.
spend? Good.
And a
We do.
So some of the simple cleanups could be as simple as someone paying $200 for having someone come over and clean some weeds and board up houses. If we have to go through the process to take the place of the owner, all of those costs incurred up to the point where we actually physically do the work is a lot, because we're talking attorney fees to do the warrants, staff time, public works time, and it's not your gardener that you can hire for $20 an hour.
Sure.
So people get upset that a $200 cleanup in their eyes cost them $1,400.
Well, they're lucky it doesn't run into any more of a public works project and prevailing wage. Anything over $1,000, I believe, technically supposed
And
to be
it
paid.
can if you get into demos. That's why these demos are getting expensive, because we have to go in and we have to have some asbestos testing done if they're multifamily or commercial. After you have testing, if you have abatements, the cost can just keep going up.
It's a shame. So that's all I have, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for that clarification.
Mr. Mayor, I'm not certain whether or not the public hearing was officially closed.
Oh, I beg your pardon, no. Oh, I did not. Well, thank you for that point of order. At this time, I will close the public hearing, as we had nobody try to comment on that. So do I need to ask for the motion a second again, or can that stand?
To make it more quick, if someone could perhaps make the motion again just as it's printed.
Okay, then.
So
Yes.
moved.
And a second again.
So Councilman Bryant still made the motion, and Councilman Ed Whiting still made the second. Thank you very much. So we have a motion and a second. We have had discussion. May we have a roll call, please?
Mayor Pro Tem Pryor,
Yes.
Councilmember Bryant,
Yes.
Councilmember Evelyn,
Yes.
Councilmember Whiting,
Yes.
and Mayor Norris.
Yes, that passes on 5-0 vote. Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, do we have any citizen request public comments? We have none. Thank you. I won't bother reading that then. Item number 6, council statements, non-action. Councilman Bryan, I'll begin with you this evening, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll try to be brief. I know that's trouble with me usually. Just as I did last time, I still want to implore folks to please, please, please consider to shop local. Do what you can to support your neighbors and your local businesses, and I think it's effective either Friday or Saturday. Things are going to get a whole lot tighter, and it's going to be even more hard for those folks to make ends meet. So I would just ask that you please support and shop local wherever you can. One thing that I've really tried to ask folks to be is just be reasonable. You know, it seems like a lot of the restrictions that are being put on us by the state, many consider unreasonable, and I don't doubt them, and I don't fault them for those beliefs. But unfortunately, a lot of the folks around town, their licenses and their livelihoods depend on their compliance and their imposed compliance upon you. Sure, we have the freedom to do whatever we like and not shop there, take our business elsewhere, and God bless you if you make that choice, but I would strongly encourage you to please just understand that they're not happy just as much as we're not happy when we have to be inconvenienced in shopping in places, but they need that money more than ever today. So please do yourself a favor, do us all a favor and shop local. Councilman Evelyn, it's funny, he made mention of the content of the plastic receptacles. I do find that very interesting, that in the war on petroleum, we continue to find ways to use and manufacture a need for petroleum. And God bless them. I guess we'll never get rid of cell phones, cars, plastic, electric cars and whatnot either. But on that same note, today we've got a lot of folks who are fighting to defund police, right? And that's a damn shame. But at the end of the day, SB 1383 and its compadres basically creates a trash police, right? You think we're going to see any calls to defund the trash police? Just saying, if the shoe fits. And that's all I have, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, sir. Councilman Whiting.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I really don't have anything except to wish you an early happy birthday, and may it be a very warm and wonderful day for you and the family. And thank you for your continued service for all of us here at the City of Taft. We appreciate it more than we can ever show you.
That's very kind of you, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you. My pleasure, I assure you. Councilman Evelyn.
I have no comments other than to echo what Councilman Whiting said.
Well, thank you, sir. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's going to be tough. We're in tough times right now. The whole world's having a tough time right now. when has this ever happened? Nothing in history has ever happened to affect the whole world and things. And what does it mean now or in the future? What's going on? But you know, I'm still happy to be here in Taft and be part of Taft. We're very fortunate to have our law enforcement that we have here. They're doing a hell of a good job, and also in Kern County Sheriff Department doing a hell of a good job, and I support them 100%. There's a lot of things going on in town, support our business, like Councilman Bryant has mentioned, and I also did Councilman Whiting on our mayor's birthday and all the nice things that you do for us in our city. But we got a lot of great people in our town, a lot of people doing things and stuff. But we gotta be vigilant. You see things go wrong, like this morning's at our local coffee shop. Some homeless person threw a rock through a window, and that would be at Joe's Restaurant. They caught the guy, but people doing weird things for whatever reason. It's ridiculous. You see things like that, or you see destruction on our city property or private property, report to the police. If you see somebody do it, try and get a job description to go out there and chase a guy down or anything like that. Just call the police and give them a description of where it's at, where he's heading, and report it. But we need to be vigilant what's going on. Things are tough, and like I say, people don't think that they see all this stuff on TV, they can go ahead and burn things, steal things, throw rocks through buildings. It's all right, but it's not. That person worked hard. The windows don't come cheap. That glass probably is going to cost probably in the neighborhood about $1,500 to $2,000. It's not the glass itself; it was tinted. It had all this nice artwork on stuff onto it. It's hard to duplicate it, and you can't tell you how many meals he has to sell in order to pay for that window. So it does affect everybody. And all I can say is God bless Taft and God bless America, and that's all I have to say.
All right, thank you very much, sir. And you're absolutely right. It seems like every time that you read something in a paper or more on the TV, the lawlessness and local electeds' propensity to allow that to go on unfettered. And it's kind of like if you let enough people do it, obviously they get emboldened, and it seems to be okay to talk about what happened in Seattle as the Summer of Love is probably one of the most ridiculous things I've ever heard in my life. But we are a nation of laws. And I, like everybody in here, and I talked to our police chief and I talked to the sheriffs, and that's one of the things they say about the people of the city of Taft. They say, you go sit down and have a meal now outside in the city of Taft, and people are forever wanting to purchase the meal for, law enforcement and emergency responders, and they thank them for what they do and the fact that they are here. And we know that when we call 911, we're going to get a response, and we know that they're out there watching when we're sleeping at night. We've got people out there on the street. We've got eyes on, making sure that we can sleep soundly. So I myself, as one man, I'm talking about one guy, I would never consider defunding our police department. I cannot possibly imagine the anarchy that would follow the wholesale defunding. So I appreciate what they do and the fact that I can count on them to safeguard myself, my family, my city, and my friends. So God bless them for what they do. I'm glad I live in the city of Taft, and we've got to get through this ridiculousness, and we will do it together, and supporting one another, supporting our community however you can. And it'll be more difficult to do business and get the things that we want after we get put back on the watch list. But do it nonetheless, because there is only one way to emerge from all of this, and that is to work our way and earn our way out of this hole, okay? Government cannot continue to print money and create debt while people sit idly at home. There's only one way to get out, and that's earn your way out of this hole. Turn the private sector loose, let them use their God-given talents and make the right decisions. So that's all I have. And every single day is another day when we talk about those things, but I'm glad I get to talk about it in the city of Taft. Before I go, I've got to tell everybody out there, I got the most incredible, beautiful gift, and I got it from the people that I'm fortunate enough to work with right here in the city of Taft. My birthday is coming up here shortly, and I've been fortunate to represent the people of the city of Taft and work with these folks for a great many years now, 16 years, and to be recognized like this by your peers is very, very overwhelming. So I want to thank you all for your consideration and for your thanks, and let you know that being a part of this team is one of the great accomplishments of my lifetime. It truly is. So thank you all. All right, next up, City Manager statement. City Manager Jones.
Thank you, Mayor. As we're expected to roll back our opening of certain types of businesses, I'd like if Mark Staples could give an overview of options some of the businesses may have if they choose to operate outside.
All right, great.
Planning department will have some process.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. Just to go over it briefly, as you're seeing, at least for Kern County, it's some good news, but we're teetering on and off that county list. And the first time we came off, if you notice, Kern County, Bakersfield, some other areas, they were looking to provide some flexibility to their businesses, particularly the restaurants and bars, and businesses that were also targeted beyond just the county. So we did draft up a application that will put into effect now that it looks like we'll be in this situation for a little longer, where the restaurants and other places can utilize some outdoor space, since the indoor space is the area that's getting closed up. So social distancing, getting under tents. I've noticed Joe's has been having breakfast out on the sidewalk. They have a tent on the side. It's a no-cost permit, but it has a lot of the provisions that you normally would see if you were looking to get an encroachment permit to have seating, part of your restaurant or whatever out on the sidewalk. So if it's on your parking lot, it's just our application, which is this temporary use permit. If it ends up on the street sidewalk, you would also need an encroachment permit through Public Works. We'll walk you through it all, but this is hopefully going to help that transition as we teeter back and forth, probably on the list for a couple of weeks, back off and back on as these metrics keep being in flux with infections and whatever else puts us back on the list. So go ahead and give me a call, send me an email. All my information is on the city website, and we can walk you through it. There aren't too many that it really applies to, but there's a number of restaurants that I'm sure dancing back and forth with being on off the list.
We're opening up outside to barber shops and other things too, so we might get a little interested.
Yeah, if there's some other unique ones, the restaurants tend to be the focus, but those that end up on the list where the state's wanting them to shut their interior areas, barbershops and other locations, if we could figure out an outdoor location. The key thing is whatever tent or table setup, can't take handicap spaces, can't block the drive aisles, so stay within the striped lines of a parking area. We're not going to count the parking against whatever shopping center or individual property that you're on. This is a temporary thing. Originally, we were timing it with Oil Dorado because we thought we'd probably be out of this by the time we hit then, but basically, we'll probably allow this all the way through whenever all the emergencies are lifted, and maybe some days after that for more transition time. But it's a no-cost permit, but we want to get this all documented and make sure we're all covered, especially on the restaurant side, because some may be serving alcohol, so they need to double check with ABC about serving outside. We're okay with it, but making sure their ABC is aware of their use that way. So.
I think a critical aspect here is that the people know, and I was a part of the Kern County Board of Health Advisory Committee, and during the course of the discussions of that committee, it was just as critical for that committee, and that is for everybody out there to know that this is a can-do attitude. This is looking at the information coming from Sacramento through executive order, and if it says you cannot do this, this, and this, then that's what it says you cannot. But if it doesn't reference the other things, then that is a can. It's a matter of coming up with a plan, and that would be city staff working in conjunction with the business owner who's trying to provide a service to the people, to the community, and coming up with that hybrid plan. So unless it is specifically stated that it is an absolute no, or you will run afoul of some state agency, then the attitude here in this city hall and amongst the city manager and his staff and the department heads is come in here and talk to us, get a hold of us. We will find a way. We will find the best way. That is what we want to do. That is what Mark is saying right now. Is that correct?
Yes, and to add to that, because we have been teetering on and off the list, the temporary approval that we would give would not go away when we're off the list for a little bit, because we may teeter back. So this is probably through the rest of this year. Just presume that that's how long the approval will be good for, and then we'll, once we get to closing all these emergency statuses that we have statewide, countywide, or in the city, then we'll start addressing when these temporary permits are finished and no longer valid.
Very good. It's really important everybody out there knows that we are ready, willing, and able to address these issues, and our response will be extremely quick. So thank you very much for coming up and talking about that.
I do have one question.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
When it comes to the resources or frequent contacts that these folks might need, is there a way that we could provide some type of pamphlet or directory of this is the number if you need to call ABC, this is the number, just a way we can provide another service that would expedite their ability to provide service or products to the locals?
Well, when it comes to businesses and any changes or modifications, they should pretty much have my email or phone extension as probably just step one, just to hear a voice, and I'll go through those steps and processes on, because it may be a question that will never be covered by what's on a pamphlet or permit. But our original business license application does have all the departments, so questions with fire, they're needing to do some fire sprinklers, or if their tent proposal is gonna be something large that will need a fire department review. Yeah, over the 400 square feet, we'll need one of those thicker white, more fire resistant canopies. But I'm willing to talk to anybody, even if it's just a conversation, not ready to go at all. That's the best kind, is work out what the issues are. Yeah, before you sign on the dotted line, put the card on the table, give me a call and we'll go over these little things. And also because, just as ABC as an example, most times they'll defer to us anyways, because we're more of the enforcement agency of they got to stay within these boundaries of four walls of their business,
Sure.
have a patio, so on and so forth. So we're more of the direct permitter of everything, and also enforcer of the regulations. So
So the quickest and best resource is to email you or call you.
yeah,
Email address
both.
mstaples@Taft, cityoftaft.org.
cityoftaft.org,
Phone number?
extension 124,
It's at 763-1222, extension.
124.
Call it.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And do it prior to, because you may be able to minimize individual costs.
Absolutely.
Correct.
So
Yes.
do it.
Plan ahead. Let's have that talk.
This is for emerging business and evolving businesses. Anybody that wants to stay in business, call Mark and he'll help you do it if we can all do it. So,
Yep, start with me, we'll work you over to finance if you're a new business, go through all the steps, introduce you to the folks in fire, and all the different pieces you need to comply with to start up a business. But in the short term, if people are needing the outside areas for their business to get through this period, let's sit down and talk about it.
awesome. Thank you, guys.
All right, very good. Thank you very much, Mark. Any other statements, City Manager
Just wanted
Jones?
to point out, one of the issues, if you're encroaching on a right-of-way, would be the additional insured that will be required. And we can take a staff report back to council to waive the fees for the encroachment permit if it's COVID mitigation. That way it's not an additional cost to the business owner. The insurance thing we can't help, but usually insurance companies are pretty good about giving that additional insured if they know what's going on, so.
All right, very good. All right, thanks, sir. Next up, city attorney statements.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, no statement.
All right. Future agenda requests this evening, gentlemen.
None here?
None? All right, moving forward. Next up, consent calendar, items 10 through 12. All items listed on the consent calendar shall be considered routine and will be enacted by one roll call vote. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a member of the city council requests specific items to be removed from the consent calendar for separate action. Any item removed from the consent calendar will be considered after the regular business items. Those items are item number 10, the minutes for the July 7th, 2020 regularly scheduled meeting. Item number 11, the payment of bills, some $580,000 worth. And item number 12, Local Road Safety Plan, LRSP. Recommendation is a motion to authorize the city manager to sign the attached MOU with Kern Council of Government to complete the local road safety plan, and a motion to appropriate $8,000 of the general fund for the required matching funds. Does any council member wish to remove any of these items from the consent calendar?
None here.
Hearing none, at this time, I would entertain a motion to approve consent calendar items 10 through 12.
So moved.
I have a motion and a second. May we have a roll call, please?
Mayor Pro Tem Pryor,
Yes.
Councilmember Bryant,
Yes.
Councilmember Evelyn,
With the exception of number 10, I will have to abstain from, I wasn't here for the minutes for approval, but 11 and 12, yes.
Councilmember Whiting,
Yes.
and Mayor North.
Yes. That passes on 5-0 vote. Thank you very much. Okay, at this time, we're going to be going into closed session for items A, threat to public services, consultation regarding COVID-19 impacts to public facilities and services, Government Code Section 54957. Item B, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, Government Code Section 54956.9B, 2 potential cases. Item C, conference with labor negotiator Craig Jones, city manager, Government Code Section 54957.6, all units. And then finally, item D, annual performance evaluation, Government Code Section 54957, city manager. So I am going to use my brand new beautiful gavel, but I am not going to make a dent, so I'm going to put that right there. So this will be somewhat muted. Here is the gavel. I am going to close our open session and go into closed session. Good evening, everybody.